Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. Welcome to the Erin Molan Show, wherever you are around the world. It is wonderful to have your company. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed our bonus episode yesterday. You can still go and have a look at that or listen to that. Depending on how you consume this show, my guest was Ben M. Freeman, who is a Jewish man who is fleeing the UK. Should not surprise anyone. Plus, there was an update on the stabbing, the mass stabbing on the train. I'll provide another one for you coming up. But let me first tell you about my guest today. His name is Mark Goldfeder. He has just sensationally quit the Heritage Foundation. Now, this is off the back of the president, Kevin Roberts' comments standing by Tucker Carlson. It's a fascinating conversation. I was surprised a few times with some of his answers. I think you will be as well. Really interesting and crucial conversation given what is going on in that space at the moment with the conservative movement, this new woke right, the horseshoe theory. It is all just essentially at a point where I feel like it's about to capitulate. This is a really important space in conversation, particularly as well given what the Heritage Foundation has stood for so many years and its future direction. Some of the comments made by Mark are pretty scathing, and I would suggest probably quite deserving too. Following on from our update, as I give you some of the headlines before we get stuck into that conversation regarding President Trump requesting his team to look into the slaughter of Christians in Nigeria. We brought you that as a mini bonus episode a couple of days ago. Well, it has escalated, my friends, and this is a wonderful thing. A wonderful thing. Essentially, he's put out a post saying, first of all, he wanted his team to look into this slaughter of innocent Christians in Nigeria. So it's now escalated in a good way, and he's instructed the Department of War to go in guns a-blazing, that's a direct quote, to wipe out the Islamic terrorists if the Nigerian government doesn't. Now, for those who listened to my interview with a pastor in Nigeria, you will understand, and there's plenty of other information out there, that the Nigerian government is not exactly innocent in all of this, but now the pressure is on them. The pressure is on them to step in and stop this. Otherwise, the Americans, they are coming in. The Department of War Secretary Hegseth, Pete Hegseth, has said they are preparing to neutralize Islamists if domestic action is not taken straight away. Brilliant. Brilliant. Now, I know it is not the job of the United States to defend the entire world and protect everyone, but I am so grateful that they are. So grateful. Now I would beg and plead with them to look towards Sudan, which is equally horrifying. So much of it is utterly horrifying. I want to just talk about this quickly, and Tucker Carlson is clearly all over the headlines. He platforms the greatest flogs in history, not just flogs, they are utterly dangerous. They are abhorrent in not just what they believe, but what they say and what they try and convince other younger people to believe, and therein lies the danger. I did a search on Tucker Carlson's X feed. He has not mentioned Nigeria once. Not once. Not once. I'm just curious as to how someone can exist in this news commentary space and not have mentioned it at all, especially if they purport to care so deeply for Christianity. It makes very little sense, doesn't it? He was very vocal about the US planning to go in and support Israel's attack on the Iranian regime and their nuclear program. Remember how he said that World War III would be triggered if the US did? Well, we're still waiting. Not a word as innocent Christians are slaughtered in Nigeria. Tucker Carlson does not care, has not said a thing. Can anyone speculate as to why? Now, the US president made a small speech for the 40-year anniversary of the Republican Jewish Coalition event over the weekend, and anyone doubting whether Trump stands with Israel and with the Jewish community globally, well, you shouldn't be after this. Have a listen.
Hello to everyone at the Republican Jewish Coalition, and congratulations on 40 amazing years. 4 days from now, we will celebrate the one-year anniversary of the most important election victory in the history of our country. With the help of many of you, we won all 7 swing states by millions of votes. We won the Electoral College 312 to 226. We won the popular vote for the first time of any Republican in decades, and we won 86% of the counties in America, 2,700 to 525. And very importantly, the RJC helped ensure that we won the highest percentage of Jewish vote of any Republican since 1988. I can't imagine we didn't do better than that after all I've done for the Jewish vote, I must be honest with you, but that's okay. 1988's not that bad. 1 year ago, we were a dead country. Now we're the hottest country anywhere in the world by far. Wages for workers have risen at the fastest rate in 60 years, and more than $18 trillion are pouring into the United States from all over the world. We have fully secured our southern border, and we have ended 8 wars in 9 months. That's pretty good. 8 wars in 9 months. We have 1 to go, as you know, Russia, Ukraine. That includes the historic peace deal that ended the war in Gaza. After 2 harrowing years of darkness, our 20 courageous hostages were returned to the loving embrace of their families. And you have to remember, we also got many of the other hostages out long before that. Many hostages were gotten out by us. Israel has never had a better friend than President Donald J. Trump. In my first term, I terminated the disastrous Iran nuclear deal. With Operation Midnight Hammer last June, we totally obliterated Iran's nuclear enrichment capacity. And we didn't even get them by surprise. They expected it, and they got obliterated. After years of broken promises by many other American presidents, I kept my promise, officially recognized the capital of Israel, and moved the American embassy to Jerusalem. I also recognized Israeli sovereignty over the Golan Heights. Who would have done that? Nobody even thought I was going to think about it. Nobody else thought about it for 70 years, but I did it. I withdrew the United States from the anti-American, anti-Israel UN Human Rights Council and terminated funding for the extremely corrupt United Nations Relief and Works Agency, a totally corrupt operation. We're also defending our Jewish citizens here in America. Just as I promised, we're deporting the foreign jihadist sympathizers and Hamas supporters from our country, and it's happening very quickly. Upon taking office, I signed a historic executive order directing every department and agency in the federal government to do everything in their power to end the scourge of anti-Semitism in America. My administration has filed historic civil rights lawsuits and cut off funding to colleges and universities that refuse to defend their Jewish students from vile acts of anti-Semitism. And we have secured some of the largest discrimination settlements in modern times. There's been nothing like it. In just 9 months, we have done more to protect Jewish Americans than any administration in history by far. And we're just getting started. We are going to continue to help. Together, we will make America stronger, safer, richer, prouder, and greater than ever before. I want to thank you once again to everyone at the Republican Jewish Coalition. God bless America. I'm with you all the way.
Now, in the UK, police are saying a mass stabbing is not terrorism. They'll arrest a child for liking a post on social media. But this is not terrorism? When somebody goes on a stabbing spree on a train, leaving 11 people in hospital, 10 fighting for life? Sorry, Mr. Plod, that is terror. That is terror. Why are they so desperate to try to distance anything and everything from terror? It's terror. And if I hear the word, I swear if I hear the words mental health used, that might be it. I said more about this in yesterday's bonus episode, so have a listen to that. But I will repeat, the United Kingdom has fallen. What an utter disgrace. A once proud nation, now people cannot catch a train. They can't walk a dog. Young girls can't go out in the street and play. What a disgrace. Now, UNICEF's own data has found there was no famine in Gaza. This is huge, right? This is huge. They were saying there was. Now their own data is saying, oh no, we got it wrong. There's no famine in Gaza. There was no famine in Gaza. I mean, there were starving hostages in Gaza, but there was no civilian famine in Gaza. So this is a big deal, right? Because so many in the mainstream media and online used that and weaponized it against Israel. But now it's been proven not to be true. So clearly there'll be a whole horde of corrections, reports, breaking updates. I mean, it's just so normal now, isn't it? It's not even a, like, what do I say? Can you guys believe it? They're not reporting it, guys. Can you believe? Of course we can, because it has been the pattern the entire way through. Talk about the fall of the UK. Look at the fall of journalism. Journalism does not exist anymore in most ways. And then you've got this whole group like i.e. the Tucker Carlsons and the Candace Owens who, you know, went independent under the guise of, now I can tell the truth. Now I can tell the truth. I'm free to tell the truth. Well, they went independent and all of a sudden things mattered a little bit more to them than telling the truth, didn't they? So even those independents who apparently we're now free and unshackled from network media to tell the truth. Well, I mean, I wouldn't ever say that outside influences captured them, but I mean, you guys can. The news does not get any better, does it? 3 more bodies of hostages have been returned to Israel, but of course, and I say this, you can't celebrate yet. This is what Israeli people are now at. This is the stage of life they're now at where they celebrate the return of dead bodies. That is so sad. That is so heartbreaking. But of course they can't yet because they need to go for forensic testing, and Israel must determine whether or not they are actually the bodies of hostages, because Hamas lies constantly, over and over and over again, and they will use every single opportunity possible to inflict more pain on families who have endured already far, far too much. So I'm praying that they are who they say they are and that these families can finally bury their loved ones. Okay, my guest today, lawyer and advocate Mark Goldfeder. He has sensationally just quit the Heritage Foundation, so we talk about that initially. Then I ask him about Francesca Albanese. Could potentially be my least favorite person in the world, one of the most dangerous people in the world. He's currently suing her. She was served papers very publicly, and oh, that was awful for her. She was very upset about that. She's not upset about the rape of Israeli women on October 7. No, but she was very upset that legal papers were served to her. She's a victim, everybody. That was awful of them to do. Now, Mark is also looking after legal action against the Palestinian Authority for their pay for slaves. So we get an update on all of that, as well as why he decided to pull the pin on the Heritage Foundation. An act of cowardice, he says. Here it is. Mark, first of all, thank you so very much for joining me here on the Erin Molan Show. It's a real privilege to have you on.
It's an honor to be here. Thanks for having me.
What was the final straw for you with the Heritage Foundation, or was it a fairly easy decision given what's happened over the past, say, 48 hours?
You know, Kevin Roberts tried to save the situation by delineating all the horrendous things that Nick Fuentes has said, not over the years, over the past few weeks even. And yet what was oddly missing was, and that's why it was a mistake to platform him. And so when they couldn't even apologize in the face of all the criticism that they were rightfully getting, I figured, look, They're doing great work on a lot of areas, but if you can't see anti-Semitism in your own ranks, I can't be a part of those ranks.
You said a profile in cowardice. Tell me more about that.
Sure, this is a moment where somebody in the conservative movement needs to stand up and say, look, we do not tolerate anti-Semitism. We do not tolerate racism. We do not tolerate sexism. It doesn't make a difference. The idea that there are no enemies to our right, that's insane. That means you're going to open the party to neo-Nazis? Absolutely not. This is a time for moral courage. And just pretending that our enemies are only on the left is an absolute act of pure cowardice.
Has the Heritage Foundation now become the battlefield for the soul of the conservative movement?
I don't think so. Fortunately or unfortunately, I think what they've become now is irrelevant, because at the end of the day, I still firmly believe that the vast amount of Americans, and conservatives included in that, are good people who can see anti-Semitism, racism, sexism, bigotry, and who are willing to say, I don't want to be a part of this. So I think all that they have done as of now is make themselves less relevant to the conversation, not more so.
The president, Kevin, you referenced his statement earlier. You shared a post that said that that was calculated and a disingenuous attempt. I mean, they're pretty scathing words, but I would say deservedly so. This issue is far too important and far too dangerous to mince around.
Sure. Look, trying to conflate this with criticism of Israel, you can say whatever you want, however abhorrent, about Jews or the Jewish state, and that's fine, but call it what it is, right? When someone calls for the death penalty for perfidious Jews, as Nick Fuentes has done, and Tucker Carlson decides to mainstream him as if he was just another voice in this movement, that needs to be called out. And to say, again, to completely miss that point and make this all about Israel is just another way of hiding behind this thin veil of anti-Zionism that, oddly enough, for all that he hates the left, he's stealing their tactics.
Did this surprise you? Had you seen kind of a bit-by-bit decline in standards there, or did this kind of hit you for six?
You know, it's interesting. What really surprised me was the fact that he did anything. Nobody was asking for this video, right?
Yes.
If you have nothing nice to say, don't say anything. And all he did was make it clear where he stands, right? Tucker Carlson has become more and more of a pariah, I believe, in mainstream conservative circles. I think that his viewership is declining. Obviously, Fox decided to get rid of him, and it's because he's become more and more fanatical. And instead of just letting him quietly slide to the side, Heritage Foundation decided we're going to hitch our wagons to this guy. And great, now everybody knows where everybody stands.
That was the part that really surprised me as well. And the kind of way that he introduced this in was almost like our role in this, or where we stand, has dominated every single, inch of space on social media. I hadn't seen a thing anywhere regarding the Heritage Foundation and Tucker Carlson, and I'm sure it was in some parts, but it certainly wasn't so big that it required a response. It felt bizarre.
Yeah, look, if you subscribe to the notion that all PR is good PR, his post has, 25 million views? So it worked. Heritage is now part of the conversation, but I think there are parts of the conversation you'd rather not be in.
No, I would agree. Have you heard from him directly post your resignation?
I have not. I've heard from many other members of the task force who are carefully weighing what they want to do. Some have decided to give them a little bit more time to see if they might apologize and retract some things. But I've heard a lot of support from within the organization.
Would apology be enough, or have you seen too much already to ever align yourself again?
It depends on the apology. So at the end of the day, I don't think that Kevin Roberts is a neo-Nazi, and I don't even think he's necessarily a bad person. I think that he is turning a blind eye to the kind of vile rot that will end up eating this party, and that will end up eating America if nobody puts a stop to it. So if he opens up and says, my God, I made a mistake because I wasn't paying attention and I didn't see what was happening, but now that I do, I will be clear-eyed and call it out, that's an absolutely forgivable mistake. If he just says, sorry if I offended you, that's not.
Is Kevin Roberts the issue, or the Heritage Foundation? As in, if he were to remove himself, would you go back?
Yeah, look, I hope and pray that the Heritage Foundation is not in and of itself facing this sort of dynamic problem. But if they choose to keep him as their president with no apology, that does say something pretty important.
What is the solution with the likes of the Tucker Carlsons and the Candace Owens from your perspective?
I'm not a doctor, but I believe that there is some mental illness there. I think that it's unfortunate and sad, and I think the only thing we can do is try and learn to ignore.
I want to ask you now about another couple of things. And I was at a conference in New York last week that focused fairly heavily on the legal aspect of fighting terrorism, which I think is not talked about anywhere near enough. And it's such a crucial part of this because you can't really appeal to the reason and goodwill of evil scumbag terrorists, can you? So this is one place where you can try and hit them where it hurts, which is civilly, financially, or criminally, where they actually pay a price. I want to ask you about pay for slay. Can you tell my audience, most of them will know exactly what it is. For those who don't, what is it? And what are you guys doing to try and fight that in the courts?
Sure. Pay for slay is a hideously grotesque program that's run by the Palestinian Authority. And sadly, it's exactly what it sounds like. They literally incentivize murder. And the more people you kill, the more heinous the crime, the longer the prison sentence, the more money they give as what they call their martyrs fund to the terrorists and to the terrorists' families. They've been doing this for many, many years. You know, in that recent prisoner exchange, in the recent exchange of innocent hostages for terrorists, released roughly 2,000 Palestinian prisoners/terrorists, of which they had paid, I believe, was approximately $70 million in martyr payments just to that new group. So there's a bunch of new millionaires coming out of the Israeli prisons for having killed people. Now, Taylor Force was an American, not Jewish, Iraq War veteran, West Point graduate who was visiting Israel in 2016 when he was stabbed by a terrorist. And since 2016, his killer has been receiving stipends, his killer and his family. When Congress heard about that in 2018, they were rightfully sickened and they passed the Taylor Force Act, which was to curb all aid to the Palestinian Authority just until they stopped paying terrorists to kill Israelis and Americans. Our new lawsuit is Force versus the PA. It's brought by our lead plaintiff, Stuart Force, who's Taylor Force's father. And the reason it's so important now is because as the world is waiting for the implementation of President Trump's peace plan, right, an ambitious and hopefully successful plan, it does allow for a future part to be played by the Palestinian Authority. And we have to make it absolutely clear that there is no place in a new Middle East for a government that has institutionalized and incentivized and glorified murder. You know, you can make more as a murderer in the PA's world than you would as a doctor or as a lawyer. The average salary is higher. And so we have to make it clear to everyone that even though they lie in the West when they speak English and they say, oh, we've stopped the payments, as our lawsuit will show, they haven't stopped the payments. They've merely shifted them once again in their little shell game to a different office under a different name, but the same checks are still flowing.
And Mark, to make it very clear to those watching who might not be as engaged as you are and to a lesser extent as I am from an observational perspective, this is the authority that people try to argue is separate to Hamas and is not a terrorist entity. They are paying terrorists to kill innocent Israelis and innocent Jews. It is absolute insanity. The same government that Western nations like Australia and weak woke leaders tried to recognize, or did recognize in some instances, as a state and as leaders of a legitimate state. You couldn't make it up. You don't need to make it up because it's real.
As you were saying, when all of those countries just a month and a half ago or so were rushing to confer recognition on the Palestinian Authority, they did pull it back a little bit, said, well, it is contingent on them making the kind of reforms necessary to combat extremism and violence. You can't combat extremism and violence when you're literally paying people to kill other people.
Yeah. I want to ask you about probably, oh gosh, it's a real tight race here for my least favorite person, but Francesca Albanese. What is the latest there, and how do you hit her where it hurts? And I refer to legal action because, I mean, this woman is reprehensible in so many different ways. It would take an entire program to go through.
So we sued Francesca Albanese for defamation. She defamed a couple of Christian charities, and we sued her in federal court in Colorado in the United States. Problem is, she's been hiding. right? She's not appearing at events in person. She doesn't want to get served. We realized that she was going to be giving a talk, the Nelson Mandela Foundation in South Africa last week. And so we quietly went ahead and got all of our paperwork in order, and we served her there. It caused a bit of an international incident. First, the Minister of Justice tried to deny that it was valid service. I went ahead and I posted the actual authorization letter signed by their office. Now they're claiming that an overzealous employee and or a Zionist spy, hope we didn't get this person fired, must have accidentally released this authorization form. But our plan is to press forward in American courts and say, okay, now she's been served. It's her choice. Either she comes and appears in court and we have this at trial, or we'll take the default judgment.
This is a woman who sat on Piers Morgan's show and denied the rape of Israeli and Jewish women on October 7, but acts like the victim when she is served papers. I mean...
So much for respecting international law, right?
Yeah, very good point. Very good point. You mentioned the peace plan. I think you sounded semi-optimistic. I mean, we all are cautiously optimistic. What other choice do we have? You know these people and how this works almost better than anyone in terms of the ability of terrorists to actually stick to an agreement and be people of their word. Are you confident? How do you feel about where it's at the moment? We've obviously had multiple breaches thus far. Is there hope that this will stick and we'll see peace in the Middle East?
I think cautiously optimistic is exactly the way I would phrase it as well. And I don't think the optimism is that Hamas is ever going to change. I think what you're seeing now in Gaza is the sort of, East and West Berlin split, where there are people who are able to see that, wow, when we're under this international control, our lives are better. I pray that most people just want to see a happy tomorrow, peace for their children, and not spend their entire existence living in tunnels, plotting their next October 7th. And so I hope and pray that over time, the people of Gaza themselves will migrate across and want to be part of that new international coalition governed part of Gaza. And eventually that will be the dominant force that will take over.
Who can save the Heritage Foundation? Final question. Is there someone you think that say Kevin Roberts does decide that it's untenable, his position, who do you think could come in and lead to the extent that the damage that's been done, which is significant without any doubt, could be somewhat reversed?
Honestly, I think that the best person to lead now would be Kevin Roberts. I think that if he has to do a real hard look in the mirror and say, what did I get wrong here? Right? I think, again, I don't think he's a bad person. And I think that it's clear that for some reason, what people are saying is not getting through. He's not hearing the dog whistles and the tropes that Tucker Carlson is using. Maybe he didn't really pay that much attention to what Nick Fuentes was saying, because of what Tucker Carlson does is he invites these absolute insane people onto his show and he tries to sterilize them. You don't really mean all the things you've ever said and done in your entire existence, right? And the person goes, of course not. Okay, so if we just ignore everything you've ever said and done, you're actually a good person, right? And Nick Fuentes says yes, right? Maybe he only saw that part and he didn't realize the extent of all the things that Nick Fuentes had said. And if he says, gosh, I've taken a hard look and I realize it, and you know what? These are not our values. These are not where we stand, then I think Heritage could be saved. And again, I want to make it very clear. I'm a law professor by profession. And before I went back into the active advocacy world, I still teach at Touro Law School. And I very much believe in the principles of free speech and free association. Anyone can say whatever they want, but that doesn't mean that Heritage has to platform a Nazi. Heritage should exercise its own free speech and say, we don't want a part of this conversation.
And that's a really key point you make, isn't it? And that matters greatly because, of course, I was about to say those on the left, but it's not even those on the left anymore. I've got to, update my kind of,
horseshoe theory is a wonderful thing.
Exactly, the horseshoe theory. What about free speech? You're meant to be the party. This isn't anti-free speech. This is exercising your equal right to free speech.
Absolutely. I got a lot of criticism when I posted my resignation letter. If you're trying to silence, I'm not silencing anybody. Free speech includes the right to free association and the freedom not to associate. If someone says you're a dirty Jew, I have the right to say, I'm going to walk away from you.
Mark, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much for all the incredible work that you are doing in such a significant space. And thank you for actually having the courage to come out very publicly, knowing there will be backlash, and to stick up for what you believe in. It's a rarity in this world, and we appreciate it very much.
Thanks so much. Really appreciate having me on here.
This area of legal warfare and fighting back in the courts is so fascinating. And as I said to Mark, I spent some time at a conference where they went into this in quite a bit of detail. And I'm going to bring you some more guests in this space who are doing the most incredible work on behalf of the victims of terror that are actually taking these people on where it hurts. So keep an eye out for that. They'll be coming soon. I wanted to focus on the stabbing in the UK for feedback, because the piece that I published on this, you guys were very, very vocal about. People are so angry. Leslie says, thank you for all that you do. This attack is horrible. I'm so glad you reported it here. I actually have a deeper concern. I'm an American Jew, and I follow a lot of UK and Israeli news, and what concerns me is that you are the first place I'd even heard about this event. I don't know how 9 people can be victims of stabbing attacks in the UK, and this episode of your show be the only place I've heard about it. That should surprise and terrify us all, but it doesn't surprise me anymore. And I guess it just shows, keep an eye on here, because we will bring it to you every single time. Jewish Australian here needed to hear this so very much. It's a warning. Yes, it is. Thank you so much, Iris. Thank you for your courage. Thank you, El Topo. That is amazing. A lot of people saying thank you, which, again, I appreciate so much, but how sad that just bringing you the news, bringing you the truth elicits this kind of response. Dinesh got teary-eyed listening to this, sobbed. Alan Griffin, Erin, in the mid-90s in England, a young mum taking her baby boy for a walk in a park was stabbed to death while the baby was in a pushchair. At the time, I cried so hard watching the news bulletin. I then realised this country of ours was screwed. That is absolutely awful. Christopher says, I managed to get my kids to emigrate from South Africa to the UK 6 years ago. I'm afraid in hindsight, it looks like it was not such a good move. Viper says, when all this is said and done, all those in power that are found to be complicit need to be put on trial and brought to justice. Could not agree more. Jason says, Englishman here just north of London, 38 years married, fostered and raised adult daughters, as you describe here, and as in reality, it's happening. Close community taking care of each other will continue to do that. Utterly terrifying. Rick says, I've been watching from across the pond, bewildered at how the UK just, I don't even have words. Don't even have words. Thank you so much for all your feedback. You guys are absolutely amazing. We love you. Thank you for watching. Thank you for engaging. And please share. You can also go on the podcast and listen there as well. Make sure you rate us on the podcast. That'd be amazing. Share this with everyone you know so that they can know the truth. We love you. Thank you so much for supporting. I'll be back tomorrow, 6 a.m. ET. We've got Dalia Ziada, the incredible Egyptian activist. She's going to give us everything we need to know about the Muslim Brotherhood. I know a lot of you will be aware of them. A lot of you will know a lot about them. She knows more than just about anyone. We have to understand our enemy or we cannot defeat it.
Today's session will be moderated by Erin Molan, an international broadcaster and advocate. Who has been an incredible and tireless friend and ally of the land and people of Israel. Please join me in welcoming and celebrating these Wonder Women.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is such an honor and such a privilege to be here with you this afternoon, and I don't say that lightly. I've been asked to say a few words before I sit down with this incredible group of women. And another massive round of applause. They are superheroes, every single one of them. If you told me 2 years ago that there would be an attack like October 7, that I would come out very publicly in support of the victims of that heinous terrorist attack and in absolute condemnation of the evil who carried it out, and that would be considered controversial, and that the backlash would absolutely turn my life upside down, I would have said, you are dreaming. There's no chance. No chance. When October 7 occurred, there was not 1 second that I dedicated to sitting down and weighing up whose side I would be on. The thought of that is utterly ridiculous. It was so obvious, so obvious. So I went on my television show, my weekly show on Sky News, and I did exactly that. I condemned absolutely the atrocities, and I stood staunchly with the victims of that attack, the Jewish and Israeli people. Now, it breaks my heart that that is something that you feel the need to applaud. Isn't that insanity? The backlash was unbelievable, to be honest. I thought that I had experienced life in the public eye for close to 2 decades, hosting sport. I thought I understood a level of hate that existed, but I had absolutely no idea. In the week that followed, I had to give my little girl to her father. I had to get security. I dealt with the kind of threats that were considered credible that I would never have imagined. But the next week I got back up on my show and I went harder, because that's what you do. Even when it is hard, even when it hurts, even when it's challenging, you do what is right. That's how I was raised. My father is the biggest inspiration for my life, and he's the reason that I am able to do every single thing that I do. He was a Major General in the Army. He fought in Iraq for a year, bravely. He then joined the Australian Senate and became the most individually voted for politician in Australian history. He's amazing. We lost him a couple of years ago, unfortunately, and the pain of that is still as acute today as it was the day that we lost him. But I tell you what an honour and a privilege to feel so much pain at his loss. What an honour. And I feel the same way when it comes to the work that I do in this space, standing with Israel, standing with the Jewish community. Whenever it is hard, whenever it hurts, whenever I think to myself, I know that I am doing things that make my daughter's life not as safe. And I know that choices I make are putting her life in danger, and there are times that that is crippling to me as a mother because my job is to protect her. But I think then about choosing my hard, and I choose hard now. Not just for you, and I love you all dearly, but for me, for her, for every single person in the West who cares about what is right and what matters, because this is not your battle. You're at the forefront, but this is not your battle. You are doing this on behalf of all of us. All of us. And I would say to you, the loud majority mob, history has shown over and over again that they are not always right. In fact, most of the time they are wrong. We know now that the loud majority mob are wrong. Don't wait for history to determine that in 50 years. We'll be gone. Know it now, loudly and proudly. Do not ever let them make you feel shame. You are incredible. You are right. You are saving the world from the most horrific thing, the evil that is not just Hamas, but everything else around it. So stand proudly. I am so grateful for everything you people do, every single thing. When I was in Israel, I went to visit a couple of the kibbutz that were absolutely ravaged on October 7. And I want to tell you who you people are. I'm sure you know, but I can only imagine that when the outside voices are so loud and persistent that there might be times you doubt yourselves. I hope not, but there might be. I stood in a room where 3 children were burned alive. I stood in that room and I sobbed. 2 of the little girls reminded me of my little girl. I then walked outside and I saw a woman watering roses at a little place next door. And I walked up to her and I said hello, I gave her a hug and I said, "Is this your place?" And she said, "No, She said, I don't actually know who lives here, but I know that a lot of hostages were taken. So each week I drive for an hour and I water the roses. So when they come home, the roses will be alive. That is who you are. That is who Israel is. That is who the Jews are. I went up the road to another kibbutz, and there was a group of men with American accents, and I said to them, do you live here? Do you know the people here? Are you friends? Are you family? They were clearing the rubble, helping to rebuild. Not one of them knew a soul. They took 6 months off work, all very high-end, would have earned millions of dollars in America, took 6 months off for nothing to come and help. They said we felt helpless. That is who Israel is. That is who the Jews are. And don't let any idiotic fool with a placard who knows absolutely nothing ever make you doubt who you are, what you stand for, what you value, because it puts all of them to shame. And they know it deep down, and that's why they hate us. That's why they hate you, that's why they hate me, because they know who you are. For the rest of my life, I will stand so proudly by your side, and I will fight for you every single day. And I say again, and I link it back to who was the most important person in my life, my dad. And I wish he was here, because I hope he would be a little bit proud. But I tie the two together in that it is an immense privilege and honour to miss him so much every day, because if I missed him less, it would mean he was less. And I say the same thing about you and about this battle. The harder it is, the more I know it matters. And it is my privilege and my honour to stand with you. Thank you. Thank you so much for watching the Erin Molan Show. I'll see you guys tomorrow.